guys, welcome back to the channel. Happy New Year. For the first video of 2022, I figured the things I'm most excited about for the new year is obviously all the new books that are going to be coming out. So I'm going to go through my top anticipated books for the first quarter of the new year. So starting off in January, which January is usually a really heavy book release month because it's a new year. People have gotten gift cards. I have no idea why it's such a heavy book drop month, but it is. So starting off strong with January 4th, which is today, at least at the time of when this is dropping, I've got 4 books. The first one being In Every Generation by Kendar Blake. This is supposed to be her new series, and it seems very Slayer-y, Slayer witchy kind of story. And I love Kendar Blake. She's the author of the 3 Dark Crowns series, which I really liked and think is a very underrated quartet within the YA verse. So I'm excited to see what she comes out with next. The next one that I have is Where the Drowned Girls Go by Shauna McGuire. This is book 7 or 8 in the Wayward Children series, which is a adult fantasy series with all these little novellas following different kids trying to find their way back to their own personal Narnias, essentially. And these stories are dark and creepy, hence why they're adult, but they're all really relatively entertaining. So I found great joy in these stories and I'm excited. I think this series is gonna end up being like 10 books long, but they're all like under 200 pages. So they're quick and easy. And up next is a brand new to me author, and that is going to be The Ivory Key by Acacia Rahman. This follows a world where magic is dying and these 4 siblings have to try and save the magic. And this is a Indian inspired story. And in order to get the magic back, these siblings have to find the ivory key. And it sounds like there could be competition, a really good sibling rivalry, some good sibling dynamics. I'm intrigued as to what, it sounds like there still is magic within the world and it's just dying, not necessarily just gone. So I'm intrigued to see what kind of remnants of magic that we see. The last one for January 4th is Echoes and Empires by Morgan Rhodes. This is Morgan Rhodes' first book after writing all of the Falling Kingdom series, including its unfinished sequel trilogy. It sounds like she's never going to be finishing that series, as this is a new book from her, and at least I've never seen any news from it. But this follows a young girl who finds a pirate or outlaw after she has been infected with this like forbidden magic, so she goes to him to find this cure. And that's about all I know about it. I love Morgan Rhodes' writing style, so I didn't look a ton into this book just because I know she has very imaginative and animated worlds and world building, so I'm excited to see with what she comes out with next. For January 11th, I have another 4 books, and the first one is a sequel, and that is Ashes of Gold by J.L., which is the sequel to Wings of Ebony, which I actually read last January and loved. Wings of Ebony was such a good book. I've been dying for this sequel. It was a really cool world where this girl watches her mother get killed and then is whisked off into this magical community that's hidden from the world, and she ends up going back into the real world to try and find her sister and find out what happened to her mom. Our story just progresses on from there, and I really liked it. It was very imaginative, very vibrant, and just a really good story. So I'm excited for this one. The next book that I have is Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan, which this is a debut following the Chinese mythology story of the Moon Goddess. I know nothing about that. I saw this cover, fell in love with it and the title. I am just very excited to see what a pretty book like this can bring to the world. So I'm excited about this book because it's really pretty. Up next, I have Night Trender by Jodi Meadows. This is another repeat author for me. She is the author of the Before She Ignites series, which I fell in love with. This is Jodi Meadows' new story on her own. She's also one of the Lady Janies, so I'm excited to see this one. Her fantasy stories are fantastic. This one follows this world where reality is constantly shifting, people constantly go missing, and just bad things are always happening in this world. And it sounds like there are these 3 worlds all connected, and then the demon one ends up breaking and causing a lot of issues for the other 2 worlds. I don't know. This sounds like a very Portal fantasy kind of thing, and I'm excited to see that. I haven't really seen that done well besides Wayward Children in a while. So I'm excited for this one. The last one for January 11th I have is The Bone Spindle by Leslie Vedder. I love this cover, and the only thing that I know about this is marketed as Sleeping Beauty meets Indiana Jones. And I love both those things, so I'm very excited to see this. I haven't had a lot of success with Indiana Jones adaptations, so I'm hoping that this one will actually do the trick. For the next date, which is January 18th, I have 3 books. The first one being another sequel, which is Bound by Firelight by Dana Swift. This is the sequel to Cast in Firelight, and that one was a Hindi-inspired story that was really beautiful. I loved this debut. I will be purchasing everything Dana Swift writes. I loved it. So I'm very excited to get Bound by Firelight and to see where the 2 stories end up, just because I need more of this world. So very excited for this sequel. Up next I have Electric Idol by Katie Robert. This is the 2nd book in her Dark Olympus series, which is a romance series following a very mob-esque Greek gods setup. I read the first book in the series, Neon Gods, and I really liked the way she set everything up. So I will be continuing this one, and this one is following the story of Psyche and Eros. So not a mythology I'm very familiar with, but nonetheless excited given how she did the Hades and Persephone one. The last one for January that I have is Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover, and I honestly have no idea what this book is about, but I'm obsessed with Colleen Hoover's writing, and I saw she was coming out with a brand new book and I wanted it. Moving into February 1st, I've got 2 books. The first one being The Castle in Their Bones by Laura Sebastian. This is, I believe, an adult fantasy book following these 4 daughters who are all coming of age, and they have been trained their entire life to be married off to a prince and all of that, but infiltrate and take over each of their kingdoms for their mother. And I believe we're following one of them in the first book, and I love that it's taken that trope and flipped it on its head. Laura Sebastian, I'm a huge fan of her writing. I've read all of her books. She's the author of the Ash Princess series, which I loved. And overall, the concept of it just intrigues me greatly, and I'm so hoping for just dark fantasy. Next is another repeat author for me. I have a lot of repeat authors, and that is This Woven Kingdom by Tahira Mafi. This is her brand new fantasy series, and this is a Persian-inspired story about clashing kingdoms, a missing queen, all good formulas for a great fantasy, but in a Persian setting with, I'm going to assume, influences from Persian folklore. I love Tahira Mafi's writing. I'm very excited to see where she goes with this story. This sounds like this is going to be very reminiscent of An Ember in the Ashes, which is a series I absolutely love. So I'm really hoping to get similar vibes from this one. Up next for February 15th, I have my most anticipated book for the entire year, which is Health of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas, which is the 2nd book in the Crescent City series. And I am just over the moon excited about this one. The last date that I have for February is February 22nd, and the first book that I have for that is Extasia by Claire Legrand. I just finished her Furyborn series and loved it. I'm a huge fan of Furyborn, and this is a YA horror story surrounding witches, covens, and all sorts of fun fantasy elements, so I'm really excited to see where she's going with her writing. Because I wasn't a huge fan of her thriller Sawkill Girls. It was fine, but I really liked how she handled a heavy fantasy story, and I'm hoping that she'll be able to pull elements into this story as well. Up next is another book that I found because of the cover, and that is The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie O. This follows a village surrounded by water where they believe their sea god has turned against them, so every year they sacrifice a girl to him until he stops being mad at them. Where this girl, who is not the chosen, she decides to save her brother's betrothed from being sacrificed and ends up sacrificing herself, and then is whisked into the mythical realm and has to try and navigate and still save her people. It sounds really cool. It sounds very mythical. I'm very pumped for this underwater adventure. Up next, I have Only a Monster by Vanessa Len. I'm excited about this one because it sounds like a take on this Savage Song by V.E. Schwab, where this girl in a very contemporary setting finds out that her family are monsters, like quite literally. And in order to save herself, she'll have to embrace the actual monster within her. It sounds like it's an origin story for a villain, and I love villain origin stories. I wish we had more of them. So I'm really excited to see what kind of take this one will have. The last book for February that I have is League of Liars by Astrid Schulte. She's the author of Four Dead Queens, and this one sounds like a very similar premise, but we have 4 teenagers who are accused of treason and using magic, and they all band together to plan a jailbreak. I really liked Astrid Schulte's writing with Four Dead Queens, so I'm really hoping that this will have very similar magic. And finally, the month of March. So March 1st is the most amount of books I have coming out. The first being Crimson Rain by Emily Wen Zhao, and this is the final book in the Blood Heir trilogy, and I'm so excited to see how this series ends. I have fallen in love. It's very Anastasia but bloody, and it's great. Next I have All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir. Sabaa Tahir is the author of An Ember in the Ashes, and this is her first delve into contemporary, and it sounds like this is a contemporary story. It sounds like this is following a young girl from Pakistan coming to America and starting that adjustment. And I'm really excited. I love her writing style, and I think she probably put her heart and soul into this book. So I am super excited to see how it goes. V.E. Schwab is coming out with a new book, which is Gallant, and I'll buy anything V.E. Schwab writes. I love her style. This book seems like she's almost doing a play on her other series, A Darker Shade of Magic, where each world has a shadow, and that shadow is its own world, and they're gonna start to bleed together, is at least the concept I understood about it. I have no idea. She likes to hide a lot of her full synopses to not spoil it, and I really love that about her writing. Next I have Edgewood by Kristen Ciccarelli, which she wrote the Last Name Sarah trilogy, which I absolutely adored, so I'm excited that she has a new book coming out. This is a book about a girl who is followed by a forest. And I'm intrigued to see what that means. So I don't know what that really means, that a forest follows her, but it sounds like it's a mix of a love story and a horror story all in one. So it's got all the good things going for it. The next book I have for March, coming out March 8th, which is Blood Scion by Deborah Fay, which this is an African-inspired story where this girl is forced to become a monster by her village, and she embraces it. And that sounds awesome. And again, very villain origin story. And I'm super pumped to see how these all coalesce and differ from each other. The last 2 books that I have, the first one coming out on March 15th is The War of Two Queens by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is the fourth book in the From Blood and Ash series. So after that cliffhanger of A Crown of Gilded Bones, I'm really excited to see where this is going, and I think this is supposed to be 5 or 6 books long, so there'll probably be another cliffhanger, which I'm not happy about, but I am excited that we're finally getting some answers. We have an overarching plot, and I'm just overall excited to see where the story is going to go. And the last one that I have comes out on March 22nd is Wrath and Mercy by Jessica Rubinkowski, which is the sequel to The Bright and the Pale, which is a frozen tundra fantasy story. With how the last book ended, I'm really pumped to see how the story is gonna go. Again, very villainous in that kind of writing, very villain origin story. That seems to be a theme that I'm noticing as I'm talking, but it's a good theme. It's definitely a fun thing to explore. There's so many different aspects you can work with a villain origin story. I'm excited for all these books, and these are just the ones that I have written down. I know there's a ton of other books coming out throughout the first 3 months. Let me know down below in the comments if there's any in particular I should be adding to my list or keeping an eye on. And that's going to be it for today's video. Please like, comment, and subscribe to our videos. We post every Tuesday and Thursday with the occasional Sunday. And I will see you guys in our next video. Bye!